What if one of the biggest drivers of climate change was sitting right on your dinner plate? It sounds dramatic, but the truth is, meat production has a much larger environmental footprint than most of us realize. It's a topic that can get pretty heated, but today we're going to stick to the science. We'll look at exactly how meat impacts our planet, from the greenhouse gases it releases and the vast amounts of land it uses, to its massive thirst for water. And importantly, we'll explore what actually happens when people decide to eat just a little bit less of it. The connection between our food and the environment is one of the most powerful stories of our time, so let's get into it. Every single food we eat, whether it's an apple or a steak, comes with an environmental cost. It needs land to grow on, water to stay alive, energy to be harvested and processed, and transportation to get to your local store. But here's the crucial part: not all foods are created equal in this regard. Animal products, and especially red meats like beef and lamb, use far more resources than almost any plant-based food. Why is that? Well, it's a matter of simple efficiency. Think about it, animals need to eat a lot. Most of the crops grown in the world aren't for direct human consumption. They're grown to become animal feed. So before you even get a single piece of meat, you've already used up land, water, fertilizer, and energy just to grow the food that the animal will eat. It's like a factory in a factory. The animal acts as a middleman, and every step in that process adds to the environmental toll. A field of corn could feed a certain number of people, but if you feed that same corn to a cow, the amount of food you get back as beef is a tiny fraction of the original crop as calories. This trophic level inefficiency is the core reason why animal agriculture has such an outsized impact on our planet as resources. It's not about blaming anyone. It's just the basic biology and logistics of our food system. Now, let's talk about something we hear a lot about: greenhouse gases. These are the gases that trap heat in our atmosphere and drive climate change. The livestock industry is a major global source of these emissions, and it produces them in a few different ways. First, there's carbon dioxide, or CO2. This comes from all the machinery used on farms, from tractors to processing plants, and from the trucks, ships, and planes that transport feed and the final meat products all around the world. But that's just the beginning. The real story gets more interesting with two other gases. The second one is methane. You might have heard jokes about cow burps, and well, they're scientifically accurate. Ruminant animals like cows and sheep have a unique digestive process that produces large quantities of methane, a very potent greenhouse gas. This process is called enteric fermentation, and it's a natural part of their biology. Methane is especially significant because, while it doesn't stay in the atmosphere as long as CO2, it's far more powerful at trapping heat in the short term, over 80 times more powerful over a 20-year period. So a surge in methane can rapidly accelerate warming. The third major gas is nitrous oxide. This is released from animal manure and the nitrogen fertilizers used to grow the massive quantities of feed crops we talked about earlier. Nitrous oxide is another super potent greenhouse gas, almost 300 times more effective at trapping heat than CO2, and it also depletes the ozone layer. When you add all three of these gases together, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, livestock's contribution to climate change becomes undeniably significant. Beyond the gases warming our atmosphere, let's look at the ground beneath our feet. Raising livestock takes up an enormous amount of land. In fact, livestock farming is the single largest human use of land on the planet. This space is used for two main purposes: pasture land for animals to graze on, and cropland to grow their feed like soy and corn. To create all this space, something has to give, and often that something is our forests. Around the world, vast areas of forest, including critical ecosystems like the Amazon rainforest, are cleared every day to make way for cattle ranches or to plant feed crops. This deforestation is a double whammy for the climate. First, when we cut down trees, we lose their incredible ability to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Forests are one of our planet's most important carbon sinks, and removing them is like shutting down a natural air purification system. Second, the act of clearing that land, often through burning, releases all the carbon stored in the trees and soil straight back into the atmosphere, adding even more emissions. This loss of habitat also has devastating consequences for biodiversity, pushing countless species of plants and animals closer to extinction. So the demand for meat doesn't just put pressure on our climate. It fundamentally reshapes the surface of our planet, sacrificing vital ecosystems in the process. Now let's turn to another precious resource: water. Meat production is incredibly water-intensive. It takes a huge volume of water to produce just a single pound of meat. This water is used in three main ways. First, the animals themselves need drinking water throughout their lives. Second, and this is the biggest part, is the virtual water used to grow their feed crops. Irrigating fields of corn, soy, and alfalfa requires staggering amounts of water, especially in drier regions. Finally, water is needed during the slaughtering and processing stages for cleaning and sanitation. When you add it all up, the water footprint of meat, particularly beef, is massive. For example, producing 1 kilogram of beef can require over 15,000 liters of water. Compare that to vegetables, which might need a few hundred liters per kilogram. But it's not just about consumption. It's also about pollution. The massive amounts of manure produced by livestock and concentrated animal feeding operations have to go somewhere. When it rains or when this manure is spread on fields as fertilizer, runoff can carry excess nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus into nearby rivers, lakes, and groundwater. This nutrient pollution can cause explosive algae blooms that suck all the oxygen out of the water, creating dead zones where fish and other aquatic life cannot survive. So our appetite for meat is not only draining our freshwater resources, but also contaminating the water we have left. So how does meat really stack up against other foods? When environmental researchers compare different food products based on their total impact, a very clear pattern emerges. Looking at the data, beef almost always comes out on top as the most resource-intensive food. Whether you measure by greenhouse gas emissions, land use, or water use per gram of protein, beef and lamb consistently have the highest environmental footprint. Other meats like pork and chicken have a lower impact than beef, but it's still significantly higher than most plant-based options. At the other end of the spectrum, you have foods like beans, lentils, chickpeas, tofu, grains, nuts, and vegetables. Producing these foods typically requires just a fraction of the resources. For example, producing a kilogram of lentils emits less than 1% of the greenhouse gases of a kilogram of beef. This doesn't mean everyone has to become a strict vegan overnight. The science isn't about prescribing a single perfect diet. Instead, it's about understanding the spectrum of impact. The data clearly shows that even small shifts away from high-impact foods can make a big difference. Swapping a beef burger for a chicken sandwich is a step down in impact. Swapping it for a bean burger is an even bigger step. It's about making informed choices. This all leads to a really hopeful question. What happens if people actually start eating less meat? The potential effects are massive. Studies that model these scenarios show that even partial collective shifts in diet could lead to incredible environmental benefits. Simple initiatives like Meatless Mondays, where people skip meat just one day a week, can add up surprisingly fast when millions participate. If a significant portion of the global population reduced its meat consumption, we could see a major drop in greenhouse gas emissions, helping us fight climate change. It would also free up enormous amounts of land currently used for grazing and feed production. This land could be returned to nature, reforested to absorb carbon and restore biodiversity, or used to grow food more efficiently for direct human consumption. This shift would also save trillions of gallons of water and reduce the water pollution that creates those dead zones in our waterways. It's a powerful example of how individual choices, when multiplied across society, can create profound and positive change. It's not about achieving perfection, but about the power of collective reduction. Small changes really do add up. So it's clear that our food choices matter. A lot. Simply choosing to eat less meat, especially red meat like beef and lamb, is one of the single most effective actions an individual can take to reduce their personal environmental impact. It's a choice that's available to many of us every single day. If you're curious about how to get started or just want some delicious ideas, I've put a link to some great plant-based cooking tools and meal planning resources in the pinned comment below. This isn't about guilt, it's about empowerment. Knowing the science behind our food gives us the power to make choices that align with our values. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this helpful and want more science-based content on sustainability, be sure to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.